Hello, everybody. This is Bruce from Oregon with the Bruce from Oregon Show. This is episode 0. It might be the first, it might be the last. Nobody knows. In any case, we're going to continue with our Management Best Practices video series today. I'm going to be going over status reports. What are all the important details you need to know as a manager in order to have or utilize good status reports within your team? Now, today we are joined by our guest cat, Wobbly Mipmop. Wobbly Mipmop. Say that 10 times fast. That's a tough one. Who has a little hat and some Clubmaster glasses and sushi. Sushi sounds good to me. You know, we're in that lull here right now. It's December 10th between Thanksgiving and Christmas. And I'm loaded down with savory food. I think what I need maybe is some sushi to tide me over in the gap between holidays. I don't know. You tell me. In any case, let's get into status reports. So, normally I like to look at a couple articles, but today I'm kind of free form presenting my thoughts. And I thought the topic of status reports was interesting because I was talking about it with some former coworkers at the Roadhouse the other night, as one does when you're hanging out at the Roadhouse talking about work. In any case, we've got the AI overview from Google about status reports. Let's see what they say. Because some people love status reports, some people hate them. What we want to do is try and tease out some ideas for you to keep in the back of your mind so that when you are running your team or doing your day to day work, week to week work, status reports, you can be informed and have a good idea of what you want to do. Okay, so they say a status report is a document that provides an update on the progress of a project or task. It is a concise, timely document that gives stakeholders a high level view of a project's current state. Now, note the word timely here. This is very interesting because I found I was working on one project where the work by the engineers was happening every single day, and we were path clearing and removing roadblocks and solving problems every day, like hour by hour. And so I like to call this process onion peeling because it's like you're peeling off the layers of the onion and you don't know when you're going to get to the center or when you're going to be done. And what I found was that sometimes when managers wanted status reports for a project like that, by the time they received the status report or went to a meeting the next day that had the status report or read the email that had the status report, we were already 3 steps ahead. So these projects that are task force oriented, or you are learning something new every hour, potentially, these may not be amenable for summarizing with a status report very frequently. You may want to have larger milestones so that your reports can be more timely and cover more completed information, even as the team works ahead. So that's something to keep in mind from my experience. In terms of being concise, I agree with that. You want to focus on an economy of words. If you've ever seen a status report, maybe it's sent out on a monthly basis. So there's a lot of time in between status reports. And it's just pages and pages and pages of stuff. I think people just see that and they just check out. They check out immediately. They're like, I can't read 10 pages of status reports. It has to be concise. You have to hit the critical information, the most important information, or the things that you want people to know, or the things you want people to know that you need. Okay, and we'll get into the contents in a little bit, but I'm just going through their definition here. Now, they say status reports are important because they help keep everyone involved in a project aligned and informed. And to some extent, that's true. Um, a lot of the times I would get status reports that I didn't really need, but they were sort of interesting, I guess, or educational. So you really need to understand as you're going about your day, whether you're developing status reports, aggregating status reports, or reading them, which ones are going to be critical for you in terms of your project alignment and your roles and responsibilities versus something that is just opportunistically interesting. And that takes some experience, but it's something to keep in mind. Figuring out which information is critical versus which information is just opportunistic. Okay, now they have some tips here for creating effective status reports. Okay, be consistent. Send out status reports at the same time each week, month, or 2 weeks. And here they give some pretty common time frames for when you might want to do a status report, monthly or weekly or biweekly. And this will kind of depend upon who you're working with and how much information they need and what kind of work you're doing. And so there's no single answer here on how often you should do status reports. I mean, I, at the sort of end of my base career, when I was running a pretty highly effective team, we were pretty much at the point where quarterly we would sync up and review quarterly objectives and write all that down. And effectively, what we were writing down was a status report that was going into a documentation system. And so we weren't even focused on monthly, we were focused on quarterly. And maybe we'd have a checkpoint between me and the employee, you know, halfway through the quarter, but not a formal report. Okay. So in a higher performing team, or if people are doing very independent work, you can lengthen the amount of time between status reports. On the other hand, if you're doing things that are more mechanical and you are looking at numeric data, for example, like maybe you're trying to track how many bug tickets in a ticket tracking system your team is closing, you might need information, numbers, um, about their progress every week or every 2 weeks. And you may be capturing very mechanical information, but more often. And that can be very useful in terms of keeping track of things like, is the incoming work to my team coming in at a higher rate where time is in the denominator versus what they're able to accomplish? Because if that's true, you have a big problem. If you're asked to do more work than your team can do, you need to have a quantitative way to show it. Because if you only have a qualitative way to show it, your argument will not be as robust. Okay, customize for your audience. This is very good. You want to know, who is this for? Am I trying to tell my manager what I've done all week because I want to convince them I'm doing my job? Or is it more you're a program manager and you want to inform other people who may be working with your project what's going on so that they are aligned and informed? You need to know who your audience is. Is it your management chain? Is it other people? Is it people who are giving you uh, receivables for your work? Is it for people who you are giving deliverables to from your work? You need to know who your audience is. So think about that. Now, they say use visuals, include charts, graphs, and other visuals to make data easier to understand. I mean, it kind of depends. If you are trying to do a concise status report, for example, the last time I had my team actually do status reports, we were really writing very, very short sentence fragments in a bullet list. And generally, I focused on two types of bullet lists. What was completed in the time period? Let's say it's every 2 weeks. What did we get done in the last 2 weeks? And that can be one list. So, what are some accomplishments that are finished? And then the other bullet list would be problems, issues, or gaps that the team might be having that you need help with or that are becoming roadblocks. You know, hey, we said it would take 1 quarter to do a particular set of work, and it's probably going to take a quarter and a half. That could be an issue. Um, we are working on things, but the computer data center went down from a power outage, and so we are delayed. That is a problem, right? We've been asked to do 20 bug tickets in 2 weeks, and we can only do 10. That is a gap. So problems, issues, and gaps would be another one I would focus on. And you can just call that the pig list for problems, issues, and gaps if you need to remember it. That's what I call it. So that's the other one. And when we were writing these short sentence fragments in bullets, it was just to be okay, every 2 weeks, you just take less than half an hour and just bang that out. You know, don't take a lot of time because we're trying to, again, be concise and timely. And you just spend a half an hour on it, you send it out. Maybe it's 6 bullets, maybe it's four, two in each list, 2 to 4 items in each list, something like that. In that case, you don't need charts, graphs, or other visuals. Now, if you are doing more of a program management job and you are tracking indicators, like I mentioned before, how many bug tickets are we closing per week? You may have a running chart that you update every month, every 2 weeks, or something like that. And then people can see the progress in that chart. This, I want to point out, this type of project management work versus people management and directing your employees, mentoring your employees. This is very different work. And you need to plan time for it if you are going to do this type of thing, including charts, graphs, and other visuals, because this is going to be much more time consuming for a manager. And if you have too many direct reports, if you have technical work you have to do yourself, if you don't have time allotted for this type of project management, then it's not going to happen. I once worked in a team where we did not have project managers assigned, and we did not have managers or people managers that managed large teams of people. So a lot of the people managers had technical responsibilities. And there were other teams that had managers who were more project managers, and they would create these exact type of collaterals, great charts, graphs, and other visuals over time. It was very time consuming, but it was also very valuable. But the thing was, those organizations properly staffed their teams in order to have this output. And I remember one upper level manager asking why our organization couldn't do the same thing that these other teams did. And I said, well, the answer is very simple. And I told my manager this: we are not staffed with our planning for our managers to do this type of work. This type of work is not expected of them, and they are not given the time or the space to do it or the expectation to do it. So you can't come in the last minute and say, why don't you have something nobody asked you to do before until this moment, right? So you have to set clear expectations on what you want out of a status report. Do you want it to be a simple 4 bullet list that's really concise? Or do you want it to have lots and lots of visuals and indicators and data tracking valuable information over time? Because these are going to be 2 different time requirements, 2 different staffing requirements. Okay. Provide actionable insights. Offer suggestions and recommendations based on the information in your report. This gets back to when I was doing the 2-section status reports. That second section, say that 10 times fast. The second section included problems, issues, and gaps. I mean, you can think of those as being analogous to suggestions and recommendations if you know what the answer is. Now, here's the thing. If you are facing a problem, it is often the case that the problem you are faced with cannot be solved at the level of management in which you're working, or at the level of the project in terms of project management that you are working, okay? Or maybe even time frame in terms of schedule. So it may be that you have a problem and you don't know what the solution is, so you can't make a suggestion or recommendation. But highlight the problem anyway. The other thing is, sometimes if there is a problem and you've identified it and you do have a suggestion or recommendation, make the suggestion or recommendation, because don't wait for somebody to ask you to solve a problem. Come up with a solution to a problem you see as important and draft a potential solution or set of solutions for it, and then give that to your manager. You don't even have to wait for a status report to do this. You could do this with a separate report or a separate conversation with a program manager, your manager, or a peer or a mentor or something like that. So always be providing actionable insights. That's very good. Encouraging two-way communication. Invite people to ask questions and share their thoughts. I mean, here's the thing. Let's be real, guys. A status report, you're giving it to your boss. Maybe your boss will, be able to use it to know that you're doing your job properly. You're really writing it for yourself. And what I would recommend is have a mindset where you're writing your status report not because it's a chore that someone else has given you, but because it is collateral that you want to have and maintain over time so that when you get to the end of the year, the end of the quarter, the end of your career, you have documentation about what you accomplished. Okay. So don't just treat a status report as a chore that's really boring that you have to do for someone else. Make it something valuable for you as well, whether you're a manager and you're writing about the work your team has done or you're aggregating your team's status reports, if that's what you have to do, or if you're an individual contributor and you're writing about the work you've done, or if you're some sort of hybrid employee, it can be very useful either way. And, sometimes you can have interesting conversations with people because they see a status report and they have a question about it. I would say it doesn't happen very often. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know how you can encourage someone to ask you a question other than you send the status report out and see if they have any questions. Um, I mean, I've done things where I've had status reports where I've literally had a bullet line in there that said, like, um, you know, if you got this far in the status report, send me an email that says banana, and I'll send you a kudos or something. Like, I'll send you a thank you card or something because I don't think anybody's reading this far. And of course, nobody ever noticed it, right? Because nobody really reads these things unless they have to. Let's be real. So make it valuable for yourself. Okay, structure logically. Start with a summary, then move into more detailed discussions. Yeah, this gets back to the concise part of it. Um, one thing, if you are doing a job where you're going to end up with maybe it's a monthly status report and you have to do a monthly status report that is comprehensive of your entire team's work and you have 10 people, that's a lot of stuff. So, what I would recommend is starting with an executive summary that hits the top, whatever it is, 2 to 5 highlights. Okay. Maybe it looks more like that two bulleted list of here are the most important accomplishments, here are the most important problems, issues, and gaps or recommendations. And then all the details can follow that way. That way, if somebody only reads the first 6 bullets, they're getting 80%, 90% of what they need out of your status report. And if they need to dig deeper, then they can. Okay. And then they say conclude with next steps, clearly outline what needs to be done next. I mean, yeah, you can have plans. In general, what I would recommend is keeping your project plans or your teamwork plans separate from your status reports. And you still want your plans to be in a place where everybody can come read them if they need to. But you're not sending your plans out to everybody all the time in terms of, let's say you have a bunch of employees and they all have, you know, somewhere between 5 to 12 quarterly objectives. There's 5 to 12 things they need to get done in the next 3 months. What I would recommend is documenting that somewhere. Maybe it's a SharePoint or some other team file storage or a web page or something like this, some collaboration tool where people can see your team's plans. And then as things from that list become complete, maybe that can be part of your status report over time. But I would recommend just, keeping your plans as a separate process and document compared to your status reports. Okay. Now, the one exception I'll make to that is if you're making indicator charts that show data over time and you have targets, like maybe you're doing sales and you want to grow your sales numbers for a new product over time and you want to chart that, that's going to have your original plan baked into the chart. So I think maybe that's okay. In that case, you can have your goals in a plan document as well as your status reports. Okay, and again, they mentioned the frequency of status reports can completely depend on what you're doing, which I agree with. Now, what I want to get into that goes beyond this AI overview, which I thought was a good overview. You can do a Google search, and there's some other interesting articles over here on the side. If you just search status reports, there's other questions that you can get answers to here. It's all very good. But what I want to talk about that I want people to keep in mind from my experience, okay? In my experience, there's sort of three categories that the information in a status report will fall into, okay? The first one is if I'm writing a status report, the first one is what did I do? Literally, what did I actually do? Did I create a document? Did I close bug tickets? Did I write software? Um, you know, did I handle customer calls? What did I actually do in this time period myself? Did I meet with people and come to a decision about something? What did I actually do? What did I spend my time on? I have seen so many status reports from individuals where there is zero information in the status report about what the person actually spent their time on because the person wrote a status report focusing on one or more of the other things that you can put in a status report. Okay, so what are those things? If you are working on a project, or maybe you're more like a project manager, or maybe you feel like you're more like a project manager, you can write information in a status report about the project itself. Let's say the project is divided into four phases A, B, C, and D. You might put in your status report the project successfully completed stage B. Okay, that doesn't tell anybody what you did. That tells people this project is done with phase B and now we're into phase C. And of course, this is very important information they may need to know, but it is not the same type of information as what you personally did as a manager or an individual contributor. These are different types of information. Okay. And the third type of information, which I would say is sort of related to the second one, is there can just be raw data. Okay. So when they were talking here about charts, graphs, and other visuals, you can imagine if you are receiving data from the project, and maybe it's not even data you create, maybe it's data that you aggregate. Okay. There's a bunch of data from this team over here, and there's another bunch of data from a second team over here and you're making a metric that's one divided by the other, and you're putting it into a chart or something like this, right? Um, you are putting data into a status report because the results, the numeric results, the qualitative results, maybe, uh, could be important information that other people need to have. You know, sales numbers coming in, right? If you're getting a bunch of sales numbers coming in and you're aggregating that data in Excel and making a chart, you have a bunch of data. And it's effectively similar to project status, right? But it's more data driven. Now, this is the third type of information you can have in a status report. So, what I want you to do is if you're a manager and or an individual contributor and your manager is talking to you about status reports, keep this in mind. There are different types of information that you could put into a status report. And just because you could put them in there, it doesn't necessarily mean that you should put them in there. What you have to do is figure out with your management hierarchy, your stakeholders, the people you're working with on receivables and deliverables, and figure out what is going to be an effective status report. Is the expectation for these status reports that you document your time and tell people what you did? Or is it project status information because you're more of a project manager than an individual contributor or engineer, for example? You need to know these things. And also, there's no one single answer. So, for example, if you're a manager and you have more of a project manager role, and that's what your status report looks like, we have a gap of 2 weeks to complete milestone phase B, and you're telling people all this project information. There's 20 open bugs left. Okay. It still doesn't say what you did. So, what I recommend is maybe in Microsoft OneNote or something like that, or in Teams or whatever collaboration tools you use to write down information, you not just do this, you know, process oriented status report, but for yourself, keep track of what you have done. How did you spend your time? Did you just go to meetings all day and yell at people? Is that really what you want to do with your job? 8 hours a day or more, 5 days a week? Or do you want to actually accomplish technical deliverables or do other tasks that are going to be valuable to help your team and to help your coworkers? You know, and writing these things down and tracking them over time can be helpful to that end. So keep that in mind. There's different types of information you can put in a status report. Know what you want to put in there, know what's expected of you. If your management hierarchy wants a status report, but they don't tell you what they want in there, go ask them what they want. Don't wait for somebody to tell you because you think they know more than you about what your team is doing or about the processes that your team could use. Be a leader and ask the questions yourself. Bring up these issues yourself. And that's my advice about status reports. Uh, in general, whether I think they're very useful or not, again, I'm going to go back to I think they are useful for the individual that is writing them, number one, or the manager that's writing them, number one. And they're useful for other people as a potential secondary effect. Okay. And if you have that mindset, when you find yourself in a situation where management wants you to write status reports, it won't feel as daunting. Okay. That's my advice. All right. If you've made it this far, I am Bruce Morgan. This is the Bruce Morgan Show. We're going over management best practices every Tuesday. See you next week. Thanks so much.